off is exactly what you need. A rest for the international break has served the Stags well. It's allowed them to get some players back fit as we push forward into the next couple of months. Following last weekend's 1-1 draw with Stockport County, we'll reflect on that 90 minutes and a point which could stand us in good stead ahead of the next few months, which could see us without our captain Aidan Flint, who has become the latest victory to the injury curse. All of that and much, much more on this afternoon's show for the fans, by the fans. This is the Mansfield Matters Podcast, so come and have your say on your team as the Stags look ahead to a busy few months in Sky Bet League One as Project Survival continues. I tell you what, you can tell that I did that intro, some 10 minutes ago when I was rushing to get it all sorted. Latest victory to injury. God knows what's going on. I tell you what, there'll be more rambled nonsense like that over the next hour or so. Hello and welcome to the Mansfield Matters Podcast, the show for the fans, by the fans. Why? Because Mansfield always matters. And oh my word, have we got a lineup for you today. We've got a mixture between being at home remote and being here in the Mansfield Matters studio. So let's say hello and good evening, or good afternoon, or good early evening, whatever time it is, who cares? It's a podcast. You can listen to it any time of day. To those who are joining me in Mansfield Matters HQ. To my left, it's Mr. Jim Evans. Good afternoon, good early evening, whatever you want to call it.
Evening, Craig. Evening, everybody.
And to my right, he's back from international duty, and he's been through duty free, and he's picked up some curly whirlies. It's Clive Barkin. Hello.
Happy tea time, everybody.
Happy tea time, everybody, indeed. And joining us by the power of the internet, it's Mr. Alan Wilson. Evening, Al.
Good evening, Craig. Good evening, everybody.
He is there. We have got a bit of a delay, but he is there. Don't worry. We will catch up with him. Technology, don't you just love it? Well, we were going to be outside in the garden. I looked at the weather this morning. It said 5 o'clock, it's going to be 50% chance of rain. I'm looking out of the studio window now. It's clear as you like. So we could have actually sat out there in the end. But there you go. We're here to talk all things Mansfield Town. So as always, come and say hello. And just come and say hello. And join us on this afternoon's podcast and have your say on your team. You might hear me looping back in a minute because I'm going to check the sound on my phone. So let's start by handing over to Mr. Alan Wilson. Al, obviously, it's been a bit of a wait since we were last having a game, but the international break, it is certainly one which I think it's fair to say was needed for Mansfield Town.
Yeah, for the few injuries. I mean, I don't think last time I looked at the league table, I don't think we'd moved from 14th because, to be fair, there wasn't that many League One matches on yesterday. But well done to Lucas Akins scoring his first international goal, and I think it's served us well. I don't think we've had a week's rest. Get 1 or 2 players back for Saturday against Cambridge on Sky, but. I think it served us quite well. It came at a good time, I think.
Jim, it's, the international break's always frustrating when you're a fan because you just want to see football come. But given the news that we had about sort of a player and then it transpired to be Aidan Flint with an injury, we got some players back who'd not played 90 minutes at all. Getting rest in the legs at this stage of the season is actually, it's proved quite well. And that transfer deadline day edition of Ben Wayne, what a shrewd move that was. We signed Ben Wayne and we get a game called off.
Yeah, I think so. I think Clough's mentioned it, didn't he? He said, since the beginning of pre-season, the lads haven't stopped. So, yeah, I think it is needed. I'm never usually a fan of international breaks, but I think it is much needed this time. And I think it was important to go into that without a defeat, psychologically, to, a really well-earned point. And, morale will be good, I think, over the next couple of weeks. And, yeah.
We talk about morale, Clive, and we were all sort of talking, weren't we? In fact, we did a little bit of a mini sort of podcast, didn't we, on the Saturday morning about the transfers the night before and things like that. A point against Stockport turned out to be a very good point indeed, didn't it? And it's probably set us up for the next couple of months or so.
It's an excellent point. I'd have taken that any day at the start of the game, especially considering where we are with him bringing players back on who hadn't done 90 minutes before, who I thought accounted themselves really well on the day. They're a good side. They're not going to be far off the top at the end of the season, so we did very well. I'm also relieved we didn't have a fixture fulfilled yesterday because I wouldn't have seen it. I was in the air, flying Coconut Airways back from somewhere. I didn't get home till 7:30, so in many ways that was fine. But it does mean that the game I was going to go to will be a Tuesday night. I don't fancy driving there and back on a Tuesday night to Wycombe, but that's the price you pay for being a passionate Stags fan.
Yeah, well, you could always travel on the SSA, Clive.
Yeah, that's an option. I'm still a member.
Yeah. No, I don't know if Wycombe had many international call-ups, did they?
I couldn't say.
I know they got Mr. Bishop, haven't they, in goal? But
He's injured, isn't he?
oh, is he injured?
Yeah.
Must have a sore bum from sitting on the bench. That's all he's done for the last couple of years.
I think he was injured. Hopefully, he should be hearing my microphone a little bit better now. Al, is that sound any better for you?
Yes, it sounds nice and clear.
That's much better. It's what happens when you mess about. This is what happens when we were going to go outside 10 minutes before the show. Yeah. Why did we even do a podcast? Let's all go home. Right, what were we talking about? I can't remember. What were we talking about?
Weekend without a match.
Oh, weekend without a match. What did you get up to, Al, on your weekend without a match? Were you just announcing in your garden just to keep the old hand in?
It was very strange, actually. I went round. We'd been doing some bits and bobs in the morning, and we fancied a chip shop dinner. So I went round. I know it's a bit boring, but went round to the chip shop, and this gentleman came in who I know quite well because he delivers round Sutton on his little white van, and he says, "So this is what you get up to when there's no match. Then you have a chippy dinner here." It's quite funny, really. But yeah, we're just doing bits and bobs, and just listening out and whatever else.
I think a weekend without a game, it will serve us well. But I think what we need to perhaps look at now, Alan, in a little bit more detail, is that Stockport game. It's like I was saying to Clive there, we were all sort of expecting on the morning of the Stockport game, given a little bit of bad news we had from the transfers the day before, and given the news about Aidan Flint, that we weren't probably going to get anything out of the game. So a point in the end, it's a really good point, and it stands us in good stead, and actually should be the springboard going forward into the next couple of weeks or so.
And it was a nice surprise to see Bailey Cargill back. I mean, that had gone under the radar. I hadn't heard anything about that, for obvious reasons. But I thought they all did well. I agree in the comments. We did struggle slightly, but like Clive said, I took a point from the beginning because they are a good side. That they are. And I had to look back at the highlights for that goal that Lucas scored, and I think it was what's his name, Will Evans, that did the foul. It wasn't Lucas at all, was it? I think it was because Will Evans did, which was a shame because it was a fair finish by Lucas. But on the whole,
it's an easy mistake to make, Alan, isn't it?
Pardon?
Easy mistake for the referee to make. I mean, they both look the same, don't they?
Hardly.
Funny. Of course, that Stockport game there, Jim, Alan's talking about Bailey Cargill coming in, having not played at all. He's barely had a pre-season as well, and we managed to get through 90 minutes in the end as well, which was quite a thing. It was a case of needs must, though, because once we heard about Aidan Flint being injured, we were wondering, weren't we? We were in fact talking before the game. I know the team news had been announced by that point, but we were having a chat thinking, well, if Bailey Cargill wasn't thrown in, if Elliot Hewitt wasn't thrown in, there was no sign of George Williams either. I think he must still it must be his week with the cold again. Who would you have played there? I think league record might have been an actual option to struggle with defenders at this time of the season. Harps back to what we were saying before deadline day of we were a bit bemused as to why we didn't actually bring one in the end.
Yeah, I would have done. I would have bought, even if it was just on loan, I think a centre-back would have been on my list, and Clough never seemed to indicate that. I mean, Cargill, it's good to have players fit, obviously, but I thought, Cargill was off it on Saturday because he's been out for so long. But I've still got question marks in my head over him and Kilgore, to be honest with you, whether they'll cut it at League One. Because they both had a go in League One, and not done a lot. I ain't got a problem with Hewitt, Williams, and obviously Flint, but time will tell. I think if you were going to put anybody else there, it would be Mr. Barry at centre back, not a full-back, but I think at centre back, invariably, I don't think he'd let you down. And with a bit more time saved there, he'd be a good centre back at League One.
Well, we talk about sort of happy accidents, Clive, and one happy accident was the personnel available to us on last Saturday against Stockport forced a hand, and we went to a back 3/5 with wing backs, and actually that quite suited us a little bit. You know, Elliot Hewitt usually would play that wider wing back role, but having not played much football, he played in the right side centre back role, which meant not as much running. Yes, Stockport got in behind us a few times, and we had to take him off in the end, which was probably planned. But happy accident, because actually in that five, in that back three, in that particular shape, we actually looked quite good both at both ends of the pitch.
Yeah, but as you say, I don't think the manager had got much choice. He'd only got a handful of players to work with. But we've said before we quite like the idea of three at the back. But he's always going to adopt the right shape when he knows what the opposition is looking like, which is presumably what Gary does every week. He susses out the competition for the following week, so they develop a strategy based on that. But I have to say there was evidence of tired legs, so this fortnight off couldn't have come at a better time. The big anxiety I have this year, I think when our squad is all available to us, we'll stand up against anybody in League One. And I think we'll comfortably account ourselves somewhere in the middle of the league. But we can't afford to carry the number of long-term injuries that we are carrying. And as Jim alluded to, there's no guarantee that when you come back from a long-term injury, you can cut mustard. I hope they all do. But we are in a bit of a position where we have... And you could say it's out of loyalty to the players, and I think it probably is to a certain extent. But we've retained people on their contracts, even though they're not able to play, and in some cases for over a season now. I just don't think we can afford to do it.
Alan, is that a thing which is on your mind as well? Because I think everyone sort of shares the same thought process that Alfie Kilgore, superb player, but having been out for so long with that particular injury, you never really are the same player. It's almost the same to a degree with Elliot Hewitt.
I mean, yeah, I can see your point, but I would also look on the other side, the other toss of the coin as well, and give them chance, because I think they will serve as well. I mean, Aidan Flint never put a foot wrong last year, never got injured. He's got injured this year. It's just one of those things. But as soon as Cargill looked quality to me. I know it only had 45 minutes, but pre-season, but he slotted in very nice. And so did Macca. I think Macca deserves a good round of applause as well for Saturday, because I thought he was tremendous, especially at first half. I think he was itching towards the man of the match in first half. But I can understand people's, concerns, should I say, but just let it ride. Let it ride. I think we'll be all right. And as soon as they do come back, we'll certainly see, what they're made of.
I genuinely think you could be in the middle of a bank heist with 4,000 people around you holding a shotgun in your head, and you'd still be like, let it ride, everything will be all right. You are the most positive man on the planet, Alan. Never change. Never change. Jim, Alan says he's not too concerned and sort of to let it ride. And he also mentioned Stephen McLaughlin there. We've not yet mentioned him. For me, I've never really rated him as an out-and-out left-back in a back four, but I think in a back five, in a wing-back role where he can push on into midfield a little bit more, I think that's where he thrives. And I actually agree with Alan. I thought he had a superb game against Stockport last weekend.
It was excellent, yeah, and I think him breaking into the box sort of unannounced really caught them off guard, and they were struggling to get to grips with him, I think, especially coming from deep. They didn't know how to pick him up. But Clough's very fluid with his formation anyway, isn't he? From a back three to a back four, which is fine. My only reservation with it is if you go to a back three, especially against better opposition, it will very quickly turn into a back five, and you can't get out your own half. But as regards the defender situation, I'd sooner, as in sport, as in life, be proactive and not reactive, and not wait till we're in a hole. And would have liked to have seen, bases covered a bit more thoroughly. But we shall see.
I don't know. I think there's something more to it which we're perhaps not told, Clive, and it's something which I've thought of for a while. And again, I got the same feeling when we were at the evening with John and Carolyn the night before, transfer deadline day, of course, the night before the Stockport game. And that is the playing budget, the transfer budget is extremely, extremely tight. There's not too much there to go out and buy a player if we want to. Historically, Nigel Clough, I think probably 85-90% of his transfers are all free transfers. We very rarely spend money on a player. And I think, yes, we've got this numbers issue, but I think if Clough could have gone and got a defender, he would have. And I think this whole thing of we want to keep these squad places for the likes of the long-term injuries, Maris, Kilgore, etc., Rhys Oates, open, I think that's sometimes used a little bit as a distraction method to the fact that we're perhaps not as proactive in the transfer market as we perceive us to be.
I think you're right. I think there is some caution around spending money at the moment because you can only spend a pound note once, and there's lots of things that the club need to do with that £1, not just buying players. And I know they did try for a player and made a sensible offer for somebody, but it was rejected. And I don't think they were felt able to go any further because the subject of DKD hadn't reached a conclusion, and that deal could have fallen through. And therefore, we may not have been as cash positive as we've turned out to be in this transfer window. So I think the club did what it could, and I don't automatically jump to the defence of the club, but I think on this occasion they've done everything they can. It hasn't worked out as well as anybody would have wanted to, but I do share the anxiety about having this real weakness of no cover at the back at the moment.
I think it's fair to say, Alan, that there's a perception around big transfers. It's been a long time since we've had a big transfer in terms of a big transfer fee coming in, a la what we got for DKD, although, as Radford said on his night, not as much as what we wanted to. That's a whole different conversation anyway. But the point is, when clubs get said transfer fee, fans automatically, by default, go, well, we've got, for argument's sake, 750k, which we can now spend in the transfer market. The reality is it's actually a percentage of that, maybe not even 25%, because you've got fees going to other people. But of course, as Clive alluded to there, Alan, you want to put it into other areas of the club because that is what makes more business sense. The money that we've got for DKD, yes, might be available in the next transfer market or some of it, but realistically, it will go towards, trying to get the balance sheet back on level terms, but also putting money into things such as the fan zone, which we've put up over the last 6 months, the new club shop tent, which is going to be put up in the coming months, and of course, the big one, which is costing us way more than originally forecast, being the Bishop Street, which in turn, down the line, 6 months, a year, whatever that may be, will then bring revenue in. You have to speculate to accumulate.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. And then, like I say, I haven't got a problem with what's happening at this present time. But we'll just, if we can just flip the coin, like Jim said, we don't want, I forget whether it was you or Jim said, about wanting the people to save the spaces. I mean, who would you leave out then? That's the only problem, isn't it? If you've got to have the squad places, or Nigel's saving the squad places for your Maris and your Kilgore and the others, if that's
can
not,
you remember a player called Rhys Oates?
Yeah,
there's your answer.
No, but if that goes to that, would you go Rhys Oates? Because genuinely, I think wouldn't.
I can see why you wouldn't, because he obviously is a player of a certain quality. But in my opinion, we are overloaded in attacking players. And if it was a decision between leaving Rhys Oates out until the next registration window, which, by the way, is January, I'm led to believe, and bringing in a defender as cover on loan until January to sort us out.
But can you do that?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. And but even if it's based on a season thing, I still would do the same, because I feel like we don't have enough defensive cover. We've got enough attacking cover, even with younger players that we can put in and bring back, but we don't have that defensive cover. And I would rather have, I think it's a 22-man squad, which is over the age of 21. So I would rather have 22 available players
and rather than have 19 available players, hoping we might get the other 3 back sometime before January. It's like playing Jenga and taking off the bottom blocks first. No. You take the bottom blocks off towards the end when there's not many left. It's stability.
Can I ask you a question here? Sorry,
I
Alan.
didn't realise.
Can I ask you a question? Who determines the size of the squad?
I think it's rules from it's the league rules.
So how does that work with Birmingham City then?
So you can have 20. I think it's 22. Not sure whether keepers have to be registered or not. I think they might have to in League One. 22 players over the age of 21, but then under the age of 21, you can have as many as you like.
So
because they don't have to be registered.
So has Birmingham done a lot of business with the younger players then? Because they seem to have about 40 players in their squad at the moment. Anyway, it's not about. We're not here to talk about Birmingham, but it just seemed to me that if you are restricted to 22 plus youngsters, you've got to have as many of those people available as possible. And how long do you keep the door open for people coming back? It's a delicate question. And I know, Alan, you don't like the idea of killing any of our babies, but you have to kill one of them, make it resource.
I didn't realise that until Craig just alluded to it, that, you can leave the squad, if they brought a defender in, you can leave the squad as it is and then, put Reece on maybe, or if it was Reece, at a later date. I didn't know that. So that would make sense. That would make perfect sense.
Obviously, when the transfer window opens again in January, you sign a player, you then have to register them. So I get this from Football Manager, the excellent game.
Oh, the authority.
Yes. Well, to be fair, it's very accurate.
Well, the thing is, Craig, you know more than we do, so that's fair comment.
I'm just going based on that and based on conversations that I pick up from elsewhere and everything. But it's there is another registration window, so I'm a little bit why we couldn't do that. But again, I'm led to believe that we were after, because you can sign free agents up until a point as well. We were after someone, but you had to register the squad by last Wednesday. We didn't sign them because they didn't make up the mind in time, and that's it. So now we are a little bit. Yeah.
Can I just stick my old man's two-penneth in here for a minute? Because if I was God for the day, I wouldn't have the transfer window delving into the current season. It would come to a conclusion the day before the season opened.
I agree.
So that all transfers should be done out of season, apart from those 3 contractless players that tend to kick around afterwards. But then you'd have to give yourself a limited period of time. And I think in January there should be a fortnight. That would be it. When any business has to be done.
I think we should go back to the days that it was before, where you could sign people on loan at any time. You could literally have short-term loans. You could sign people for a month, couldn't you? And, back in the day.
Well, there's some truth in that.
I think Claire's absolutely right. I think the summer without football is long enough to get your business done, because most of it's spent in standoff anyway, isn't it? So you may as well just shorten it.
Well, the ridiculous thing about the Davis Keeler Dunn one was that the club put an estimated value against him. The purchasing club didn't see it in the same light, but they were resolute in wanting to buy him. In that period of time, which is probably about 3 or 4 weeks, he lost his compass a little bit, understandably. His agent would have been agitating like
his new agent, by the way. Yeah.
And so it's a game of brinkmanship. At some point, someone has to say, okay, then. Because if it had gone to the final day and we hadn't done business, we'd have been whatever the amount we actually got out of pocket, and we'd have ended up keeping a player until at least January that was not motivated at the level that he was last year. That would have been a really bad thing. And if we've learnt anything from the Danny Johnson fiasco, that was it. At some point, it's better to take a bad 700k than a good $1 million that doesn't come through the door.
Yeah.
Because the original talk was this, Bradford says it's £1 million or go away.
Yeah, recruitment-wise, I think the club do try. But I think, like Clough said, there's no point bringing anybody in unless they are going to improve us.
No.
And we've got to remember we are smaller fish now in a bigger pond, and attracting players that are worth bringing in is tougher. They got the chances are they're going to have other options at some bigger clubs with more money. So it is, I've got some sympathy with the club there.
Yeah, there is sympathy with that. Of course, we do sort of forget that we're not at that League Two level now. And in terms of a prospect for a player coming in, they're not coming into a side that's going to be challenging for a promotion. They're coming into a side that's essentially this season consolidating. And if we finish mid-table, that's a really good finish. I think we're all happy to finish anywhere outside the bottom four. Would bite your hand off for that right now. But in the transfer business as a whole, I think it's quite easy, Alan, to get swept up in obviously the action. We mentioned this on Saturday, actually, the action of the previous 24 hours, where actually, you know, we've had a whole window, and the actual transfer business that Mansfield Town have done in this last window to set us up for this season in League One, I think is nothing short of absolutely fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got no complaints at all. You know, with the players we've got, we've finally got Will Gregory over the line. We wanted to do it before, but things didn't happen for whatever reason. Chef Wednesday's side. We've got Lee Gregory. We've got an absolute belter in the other lad, Evans. He's unbelievable. He is, especially, you know, his tracking back and everything is 100% fighting. So I just can't see any problems. And what can we say about Dave? It's been an absolute revelation.
Yeah, it certainly has. I thought you were going to get your players mixed up then. So for a minute, we had Will Gregory, and I thought you were going to say we had Lee Evans, who's the retired comedian.
No, Mr. Lee Gregory, sorry.
We'll forgive you, Al. We'll forgive you.
Yeah. It's quite right, though. We did some good business early in the window. And
we did.
The focus was always on the last couple of days, which wasn't really right because the best business had been done by then. And I think all we did in the last couple of days was to do good financial business. We sold players for a lot more than we acquired them for, which is not a bad thing to do at the moment.
No.
But we still have the anxiety about is the squad strong enough and deep enough and wide enough? And that's where as fans we're going to worry, isn't it?
I just think in Nigel we trust.
Yeah, I don't think you can disagree with that. To be fair, I think we have put together a strong enough squad, Jim. And even though we've got a few injuries, obviously losing Aidan Flint is a major blow. He's been pictured numerous times now with his moon boot on, so that we don't know how long that's going to be. We're probably looking. I think we'll be lucky to get him back any time before sort of late November, maybe even before Christmas. So that is a bit of a big blow. But even then, if, and I know it's a big if, we have everybody else fit and available, we have got one hell of a squad which can compete, but it's just about having the players available at the right time and then building up a little bit of momentum. And I think, you know, in the first 4 games of League One plus the 2 cup games, in all of those 6 games, I don't think we've looked like a side that's going to get battered, including the Lincoln game where, of course, scoreline-wise, we did get battered, but we actually played some good football at times. It was just the timing of the goals which make it look, on paper, worse than actually what it was.
And the mistakes as well. You take the mistakes away, it's a 2-1 game, or we even get a point, don't we? So, but we are very robust, aren't we, and resilient, and I think we've competed very, very well. And yeah, that's even with a lot of injuries. So, I think what we've got to remember is it's not just us. There'll be a lot of teams in League One who have not had the perfect window or have not got the perfect setup, and will have question marks over their squad. And you know, not everybody's Birmingham City, so I don't think we should worry. I think relative to the field, I think, you know, we're all right. We're okay.
The fact is you can spend millions and millions and millions, Clive, on putting a squad together, but it's not money which dictates where you finish in the league. It's how you come together as a squad, come together on the pitch and perform, and what results you ultimately grind out. And that comes from the management team and the management staff and what's within that dressing room. And I think, you know, we are as strong as anyone when it comes to that side of things.
Yes, building a cohesive team is the art of football. It's not about individual players per se. Some individual players will be stars in themselves, but they don't actually contribute to team. And I think that's the problem that some of the bigger clubs in the world have. They have superstar players, but on enormous salaries, and they don't have that commitment to the rest of the team, which is bad for morale. But we've not suffered from that in recent years, apart from the Danny Johnson thing. We know about that, and I think it would have been with DKD had he stayed.
Yeah,
our players play for each other, and that's what you need. And certainly, the game against Stockport, everybody put a shift in. There were a few mistakes due to rawness. We know that was bound to happen. But I think against a team that play as well as they do, that would expect to control that game, as they ought to have done in reality, we had a tremendous outcoming of effort from our players. And they all, as I say, if anybody epitomises that, it's got to be our Welsh wizard, Will Evans, because he never stops. You can see why Clough likes him. He's exactly the sort of player that Clough wants in the team.
Yeah, and I think we talk about Al moving on from that and sort of linking into that. when you lose a player on deadline day like we lost DKD, in a month's time, in fact, I can even say it now quite confidently after actually, that we won't miss him because Will Evans will fill that void. Not in terms of position, I'm not saying that, but Will Evans will fill that void in terms of being the player that gets people off, bums on the edge of the seats, gets us moving, creates us opportunities, score goals. And, in 2 weeks' time or whatever, when he's got a couple of goals under his belt and looking even more confident, I think we'll be going, Davis Keeler, who?
Yeah, well, like I said, alluded to in the last podcast, before he went, somebody will step up. And it's as simple as that. You have to. Whether Nigel finds one in his present squad or somebody comes to the fore in the present squad, or, it could be Will Evans. It could be Gregory was very good up front, and he was tracking back and he lasted 90 minutes as well. So I just think it looks positive, Craig, whether DKD's gone or not. If he didn't want to play for Mansfield, like it was alluded to after, he's got to go. It's as simple as that, because it would upset the apple cart, and we don't want to do that.
No, we certainly do not. Right, keep your comments coming in. Have your say on your team. We'll go through a few of them if we spot ones. Anything Mansfield Town related that you want to talk about, that you can do that here on the Mansfield Matters podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we think we're shaping up after those first 4 league games. Look ahead to the Cambridge game with podcast predictions. I'm not quite sure who's top of podcast predictions. Anyone know?
No? I don't care.
No. And we might have a little bit of fun and games for you Sunday afternoon as well. Don't go anywhere. This is the show for the fans, by the fans. Why? Because Mansfield matters. You're back with the show for the fans, by the fans. Why? Because Mansfield always matters. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday afternoon. I know we've had a boring weekend without all things football. Of course, we had a couple of players on international duty. Keanu Bacchus was away with Australia, and I don't believe he even got on the pitch in his last game. Lucas Akins, though, Alan, has been showing his goal-scoring exploits, although there is a little bit of a rumour going around that the manager of the national team watched Lucas Akins and thought he's going to be a great addition for me at right back, and then got on the training pitch and said, right, lads, we're shape up how you think you want to play. Lucas went straight up front and he's gone, what on earth is going off here? And then he does that. But nice to see him get on the score sheet. And I think his less than 5th international cap at his late 30s.
Yeah, he's done well. Fair play to the lad. I don't think to be fair, like Martin Shaw alluded to in his comments, I don't think what shall we say? I'm trying to think of the word. It wasn't that good. The team they were playing against, it wasn't that good. But I mean, you still have to put the ball in the onion bag, and which he did. And fair play to the lad. And I look forward to seeing him back here next Saturday, whether it's up front or whether it's at right back.
I think it's safe to say it'll be at right wing back. Jim, international games do bring a good pedigree to them. It's nice when your players get called up, but also for people like Lucas Akins, he's been there and done it. He's obviously of a certain age now where he perhaps thought he was not going to get an international career, but has. He'll have gone away. He's gone away. He's had a different experience. He's scored a goal. It'll fill him with confidence, and then he'll bring back with the lads as well. And that's, can only be described as a good thing.
Yeah, it's part of the feel-good factor, isn't it? To think, when was the last time we missed a game because we had too many international call-ups? That sort of, it did make me smile. And it's good. It's a positive thing, isn't it? To point to the group. Now we're sort of moving up the pyramid. We've got 3 or 4 internationals, haven't we? So, yeah, can't hurt.
Absolutely. I'm not quite sure how Ben Wayne got on for New Zealand. I'm not sure whether they've played or not yet, but either way, nice for them to get that bit of experience and bring it back to the training ground. And for the lads to have a bit of time off as well, because sometimes you do need that little bit of a time off to rest and recuperate going into the next month of fixtures. But before we look ahead, Clive, to those next month of fixtures, let's look back on the 6 games that we've had so far in all competitions and ask the immortal question. Having seen all 6 games, Do you still feel that we've got what it takes to be in this division again next season?
Absolutely right. We are mid-table, in my opinion, based on the quality of players and the squad that we've got. My only anxiety, as which I said already, is it depends on us keeping the injuries to a minimum. And that's something as a club we haven't been able to do.
Jim?
Yeah, we'll stay up, I think. I think, don't forget, there is a real resilience about our squad and our manager who knows the division very, very well. I've got no... And the pressure, it's a different pressure this year. Last year, we had to get results and we had to go up. Well, Nigel Clough did. But this year, it's about, finishing, basically surviving. So, yeah, I think we'll be absolutely fine. We'll have good patches and bad patches, but I've no doubt we'll pick up enough points to be okay. And from the teams I've seen in the league, in the flesh, the other teams are coming up against, none of them sort of wow me or scare me. I've got to be honest.
Alan, what about you?
I'm quite happy, Craig. More than happy, in fact. Yeah, I think we'll be okay. When we get the injuries back, irrespective, how quick they come back, I still think we can cope with what we've got.
What about the absence of Aidan Flint, though? Because, he was missing for the last game against Stockport. We mentioned it in the first part of the show. He's carrying a bit of an injury and things like that. We're not quite sure how long he's going to be out for, Alan, but he's also our captain. He's also our leader. That's, that is a big hole to fill in some respects.
It is, and I'm just wondering how much of an injury it was carrying, before the game at Lincoln. Because he hasn't looked on it, has he, for the last couple of games now, whether that's the step up, whether he was slightly injured, I'm just not sure, because he didn't look too comfortably. He held his hands up against the one where he made the mistakes, which was fair enough, but it doesn't look like the Aidan Flint we know and love. So I'm just wondering if he was carrying some sort of injury. But yes, I agree, it is a big loss, but somebody will fill that void. They've got to. And Nigel and the coaching team will make sure of that.
Well, one man who filled the captaincy void, Jim, was Lewis Reed. What did you make of his performance as a skipper?
I think it was okay. I mean, a football captain, it's not like a cricket captain. I don't think it's as vital. And there's always, you look at our dressing room, there's half a dozen captains in there anyway, whether they got the band or not. So yeah, I think he was all right. I think he started really well, Lewis Reed. He's looked a bit leaner, a bit more mobile, and I think he's been one of our better players this season. Yeah.
In terms of making the step up from League 2 to League 1, Clive, has any player in particular surprised you at how well they've made the step up, or maybe the opposite, how not well they've made the step up?
I think it's too early to judge. I like Jim, I like Reed. I thought his work rate's where it needs to be. He's certainly got the ability to play at League 1. And again, it's a question of, does he need any more support in the middle of the park than he's getting at the moment? I've become the second member of the fan club that's operated by Mansfield Town Shirts. By the way.
The Haram Boateng fan
yes,
club.
I've become number 2 fan now.
Have you paid your subscription fee?
Not yet, but I guess I'll be required to. But I thought he was splendid. I forget the goal. It was. I think his contribution was remarkable, considering he hasn't had that much pitch time.
Yeah,
and he does have a pedigree.
He does. He's a frustrating player, Alan Haram Boateng, isn't it? A little bit, because sometimes he goes missing in games, sometimes he doesn't do it, and then he just turns up and gets a finish like that.
And he's got that in his locker, hasn't he? He's definitely got that in his locker, lad. As it looks as though sometimes it can be ambling about, but he knows that. He knows how to keep hold of that ball, and he knows how to pass. But going back to Reed, I would have given him man of the match against Stockport, in my opinion. I thought he was tremendous as a leader and as his normal defensive midfielder role. I thought he was superb.
Keep your comments coming in. Have your say on your team. Simon says, good to see some different corners without Flint. Dave and Cargill will get us through. Set pieces could be a good weapon in our arsenal, Jim.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Any team at any level, set pieces are big. And Dave looks particularly dangerous, I think, at corners. More dangerous than Flint did, to be fair. But yeah, I think it's a string to your bow, isn't it? And you often see successful teams have a good set piece.
And speaking of players that have surprised people, Clive, Simon in the comments has also added Gregory has surprised me much better than I thought. It's an interesting one, Lee Gregory, because again, didn't have much of a pre-season. When he did, people thinking he's not really got much, but he's got that League One knowledge. And, you know, as much as Will Evans, we sort of rave about him, Lee Gregory's a big part of that partnership.
Lee Gregory's done it all, hasn't he? There's nothing should surprise him about playing at this level. I agree. I thought during the run-up to the season, he looked a little bit not disinterested, but disconnected at times. But I think since it's become meaningful, his work rate's been excellent. And I'm happy he's in our squad because I think he'll get his share of goals, but more importantly, he'll cause a lot of distress in opponent defences.
Richard says, let's not put our resilience too much on Flint. He won't be able to bully defenders like he did last season. Need to be able to put our trust in other defenders, absolutely. And Keeley says, Gregory and Evans look like they are going to be a great partnership. The whole team did well against Stockport. They all look like they wanted to be on the pitch wearing one of our shirts. And that's all we could ask for, Alan, now, isn't it, going into this next month or so? You know, we've got 3 league games and all we want is 100% commitment. It's all we ask for from every player every week.
And I think you'll find that, especially from people like Gregory and Evans, you know, as soon as they've got the shirt, they'll want to keep it. And the others will do so accordingly, I think, as well. And I like seeing all the comments. They keep calling him Dave. He's not Deji now, Deji Oshilaja. He's Dave.
You need to say it on the PA as well. I'm not going to be happy. Just Dave. Look, I know you've had a word with Uncle Stephen and asked him whether you wanted to call him Quiniesta. Why you didn't ask him to be called Uncle Stephen, I'll never know. But have a quiet word with Dave. Just explain why. So, look, we can't pronounce your name properly. We don't want to, you know, do you disservice. Everyone's calling you Dave, and you know.
Just explain.
Just explain.
It's a term of endearment.
It's a term of love. Respect. Dave.
It is Oshilaja and not Oshilaja.
Dave.
I've found that much out.
When you bump into him next, just tell him from this point onwards, we are going to refer to. We're going to call him Dave. Paul says in the comments, wife calls him DJ Oshilaja. Just Dave. I have to say, Alan, as well, you know, I know if you're laughing at comments on here coming through, people calling him Dave. There's a few people in the block around where me and Jim, so I don't know whether you've noticed this or not, that I've started calling him Dave as well. Because me and the guy next to me, we go every time he wins, ready going, "What up, Dave? Get up, Dave!" And there's a few people clicking on now and calling him the same. It will catch on. It will catch on.
It soon stick.
Dave, yeah. It's a term of affection, isn't it?
It is a term of affection, just like Uncle Stephen's a term of affection.
Did you, by the way, just talking about Uncle Stephen? Did any of you see the video release?
Yes.
I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah,
very, very good. So what Clive's referring to there is the organisation that do sort of the signed memorabilia, the official partners for that, called From the Club. They've got their own sort of video podcast on YouTube. They've interviewed Adam Murray as well in recent weeks, which is really insightful as well. Talk fondly about his time at Mansfield. But the Stephen Quinn one in particular, Clive, was very interesting, especially towards the end when Uncle Stephen was asked what's next. Is, you know, I might be doing my badges, so I won't mind a crack of management.
Yeah, he said he was doing his badges. I don't know whether what sort of badges they are. I think it might not be anything to do with football, of course.
They are. They
could be breeding badges.
The old Kellogg's ones that you used to get for swimming, that you used to stitch onto your swim shorts.
But he did allude to the fact that he fancied stopping in the game, and he felt that his badges would lead him down that route towards coaching and ultimately management. Well, that's good news, I think, because 2 years ago, Clough was saying, "Oh, we won't keep him because he's got outside football interests to concentrate on." Well, clearly he can do both.
It's an interesting one, that, Alan, because like Clive just said there, 2 years ago, he was pretty much ready to hang his boots up, you know, leave football in his background, and now he's sort of looking ahead for a career in it, doing his coaching badges and what have you as well. And you know, we will be due a manager. I don't like to say it this early in the season, but we will be due a new manager. I think this time next season. I think once this season's over, we'll be discussing a managerial change. And I don't know, putting 2 and 2 together maybe and getting 9,000. I don't know, Alan, but Stephen Quinn, backed by a few members of Clough's backroom staff, it seems like a natural transition, does it not?
Yeah, but I think it's too early, too soon for. But I think it got what's the word I'm after? He got something in mind because how well we'd done the first 2 years with him being in that team. He knew there was a plan going forward. Uncle Stephen did, and he wanted to make sure he was part of that ride, which he did, and we got promoted. And I think that's what he was wanting, more than anything. And on that ride, over that ride, he's quite happy to stop for another year and obviously keep an eye on the nephew as well. And it's a dual purpose, isn't it?
I think there's another ingredient, Alan. It's a very commonsensical one, and that's he's a family man.
Yeah.
He lives nearby.
Yeah.
The idea of continuing to work with a small commute has the same appeal to him as I'm sure it does to Nigel Clough.
Mm. And it's an open door for him, really. I mean, who better to learn from? Maybe Clough has another year and promotes Stephen Quinn a little bit higher than what he is. Maybe player coach, maybe player assistant, whatever. Maybe has 6 months. It seems like a natural transition. I think any team or any club would find it hard to move on for a manager of Nigel Clough's experience and knowledge, and especially what he's done for the club on the pitch. It seems like a natural transition to do something in-house. And I think there were a few people that spoke to us on the John and Carolyn night, Clive, who said, we're actually quite surprised that Clough's here. And I think he actually said it himself, didn't he? He's made no secret of the fact he wants to retire at some point. And had we not got promotion last season, would have done. So one more year, who knows?
He's been dead straight about it, hasn't he? He said, had it been unsuccessful last year, he would have gone. If we have an awful season this year, he might go mid-term. He doesn't need the job. And the club doesn't need a manager that isn't as invested as he has been. So I think there's a natural line somewhere. We don't quite know where it is, but I don't see him being here next season, as you don't. And I also think it's time for the club to trust a younger manager, to breed a younger manager, because you can't get the experience that Nigel Clough brought very easily. And if I'm being critical, and I don't intend to be overcritical here, he's a very expensive team.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't come on his own. And all of those people are on, proper salaries, I'm sure. And a club like ours, having to keep an eye on cost, would probably get a cheaper management team when Nigel eventually goes.
Be interesting. I don't know about you, Jim. I'm just looking forward to the fans singing Uncle Stephen's Barmy Army.
Yeah, it's got a nice ring to it, but I can't get excited about that just yet. Not because I think we're perhaps reading a bit too much into it too early, and there's no guarantee that good players make good managers. So I don't know. I think it's too early to say. But as regards Clough, I mean, I'll be eternally grateful to him to getting us promoted. But I don't like talking about a successful manager for us going, really.
Well, you might have to get used to it, because I can guarantee you we will be having this conversation again at some point later this season, whether or not Clough is still in charge or not or whatever. I don't see any reason why he would go. I just want to clarify that. But at some point,
I think you've got to accept that Nigel Clough has earned the right to make his own decision on his own terms. And if he's actually not as committed for whatever reason to staying on as taking the gruel and grind of being the manager, then it's his right to retire.
Yeah.
He's at the age where he can retire. And I don't know, but I'm guessing he hasn't got any financial anxiety about retirement.
No, definitely not.
Plus, he's a football man, and I bet he'll struggle to leave it alone. While it's set up for him and going all right, it'll be low to walk away from.
Do you know what? I suspect when he does stop being a manager at Mansfield Town, he'll end up going back in some capacity to Burton Albion.
Yeah, conversations for another day, of course. But do go and watch the interview from Stephen Quinn. He talks a lot about his career, about his injuries, and talks a lot with passion about Nigel Clough as well, and indeed Mansfield. So just search for From the Club on YouTube, and if you go on our Facebook page, I think we shared it on there as well. So just scroll back a few posts and you'll find it on there. A well-worthy watch. Let's turn our attention to the next month before we do podcast predictions. Bit of a smaller month this time round. 3 league games and 1 cup game, a meaningless cup game, albeit. 3 home games in that, Alan. Cambridge on Saturday, which is a 12:30 kickoff, by the way. That one's going to be on Sky Sports Plus, so don't miss that one. Make sure you don't you set your alarms a bit earlier for that one. Followed by a Tuesday night game in the Bristol Street Motors Cup with David Sharp's Bradford City. followed by a home game on the 21st of September to Shrewsbury Town, and then finishing the month at Northampton with a trip there. Realistically, Alan, we want to try and get through this month, matching what we did league game-wise. Last month, a win and a draw and a defeat, to be bang average. I think that would be all right. Nobody wants to lose, of course, but a win and 2 draws, maybe. I think we've got a good chance here to really dig our heels in a little bit.
I would go for 2 wins and a draw, and let's beat Bradford as well. Let's keep in the cup while we can. Let's, keep in as many things as we can. Keeps the pennies rolling in, especially in the Bristol Street Motors one. So Bradford's doing reasonably well at the moment, so it should be a good, interesting game, that one, I think. Cambridge are down near the bottom, and so is Shrewsbury. So, it's good chance of 6 points, hopefully. But we all know, everybody thought we were going to get battered against Stockport, and we played it really, really well and managed to draw. So we probably think Cambridge should be a lot easier, but it's not always like that, is it?
Yeah, it certainly is. It is not. So make sure you get yourself a ticket to those games and support the boys in all of those competitions. Right, it's time for arguably the best jingle in podcast land. So can you be the master or an embarrassing disaster? In this guessing game, there's a simple aim. It's outguess the rest and be the best. Win, lose or draw. Do you know the score? Who will be your hero to make sure you don't score 0? Yes, it may be fiction, but this is Podcast Predictions. So it is time for podcast predictions. Before we go for the Cambridge game, now I'm looking at the whiteboard, which I've situated in the office next to the TV. At the start of the season, we all made predictions about who would be top goal scorer and how many goals they would score. Now, we've never had to do this before because we've never been in a position where those players no longer are at the club. So as a reminder, Nick went for DKD with 18, Clive went for DKD with 22, Cam went for DKD with 17. Jim went for Will Evans before he'd signed, by the way, for 20. Yeah. Alan went for DKD with 16. I went for Tom Nichols with 15. For the first time ever, I'm going to allow us to make changes to that. And that's including me, because if you can change it for DKD, I can change mine as well. So we'll start with you, Clive. Who are you changing your top goal scorer for the season for? And what figure are you going to put to that?
Will Evans, 13.
Okay. Alan, you can change yours.
I'll go with Gregory and the same amount, 16, as what I'd got with DKD.
So, Jim, you went for Will Evans before. You can change yours if you wish.
Well, common sense would say Lee Gregory is a good bet, but I think I'll stick with Will Evans. I think Gregory might get injured at some point because he's a bit old, isn't he?
So you're sticking with what you got?
Yeah, I think Will Evans will explode at some point. Not literally. But.
Yeah, okay. I had Tom Nichols. Now, he's technically still in the squad, but I've allowed you to change yours, so I'm changing mine. And I'm going to go for Lee Gregory with... I'm going to go with the same amount of goals. I'm going to go 15 goals for Lee Gregory. We'll get Cam's and...
Cam can stick with his original choice.
Yeah, I agree, actually. Yeah, he can stick with his original choice, seeing as he couldn't be bothered to turn up for this podcast. Nick had other things on, so we'll excuse him from that. But we'll get those in the group chat and update you on that in the next episode that they're on. Let's turn our attention to Cambridge then and podcast predictions. The top 10 for podcast predictions, by the way, is now on our social media feed. And by some weird happening, I happen to be leading that. So podcast predictions is now over. We're never going to play it again, and I'm crowned champion forever. That's how it works now, Clive, right? That's how it should work.
I'm going to say something to you now.
Go on.
It rhymes with Rolex.
Okay, fair enough. I'll go first, though, for podcast predictions for Cambridge. I'm going to go for a 3-1 win, and Lee Gregory will be the man who gives me some extra points on the board, my fantasy player. Alan, I'll come to you next. what will be? Will we win, lose, or draw?
I will go with the same score as you. Mansfield Town 3, Cambridge United 1, and I will go Will Evans.
Okay, Jim.
2-2 draw. Will Evans.
Clive.
2-1 win. Lewis Reed.
Okay, good choices. As ever, if you want to play along with podcast predictions, you can via the link in the description. We'd love for you to play along with that game. Can you get me off the top of the league? Let's face it, probably not. Oh, what's that? It's game time.
Content loading. Selecting game. Game selected. Players stand by. Caught offside.
Now, we are going to play this game. This would have worked a lot better if we were all in person, but Alan had to stay and look after Mrs. Wilson at the last minute. So we will play it virtually and we'll add another minute on the clock for it. I'm going to explain what caught offside is for you. Is everyone familiar with the game Hot Potato?
No.
No.
Well, we're off to a good start already. Hot Potato is basically where there's a circle of you've got a ball, you've got like a minute on the clock, and you've got to throw the ball around. And
I'll get me coat.
at the end of the day, at the end of the timer, you're the one that's not. If you've got the ball, you're out or whatever it is.
Right.
I'll explain what this game is.
Is the potato cooked?
Is the potato cooked? I don't know. I have to confirm there is no potato in this particular game. So let me explain what caught offside is then, shall I? It looks like this. So there's going to be 3 minutes on the clock, and the aim is to avoid being caught offside when the timer runs out. And the way to do this is by getting the question right when it's your turn. Whoever is caught offside when the timer runs out will receive no points, whilst everyone else playing will receive 1 point.
Oh.
In this game, it's all about finding the Stags player within the clue. And if the clue, for example, is podcaster often in delay, the answer would be Jim. So we're looking for a Stags player that rhymes with Jim, Christy Pym. So the answer would be Christy Jim. With me so far?
Sort of.
You'll pick it up. Forewarning though, sometimes it will be the player's first name that rhymes. It might be part of their name that rhymes, or it might be their podcast nickname that rhymes. So think carefully before you answer. I'll pick the person who will go first, and if you get the question right, you will nominate who goes next, so you can be a little bit tactical. Let's give you a bit of an example. Let's see if you can get this one. So here's the clue. Another word for departed or left, as in no longer here. What would be the answer to that clue, Clive?
Gone.
So what would rhyme with gone?
Ron.
No, close, yeah. We're thinking Stags players. Will Swan. Will's gone.
Oh, I was thinking first names.
No, first names like you weren't listening. Were your first names, last names.
Yeah,
there you go. Do you get what I mean by that, Jim?
I get what you mean, but he's not a Stags player.
No, I know. This is why it's an example.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Alan, do you get what I mean with that one?
Yeah, just about. Yeah, I'm just hanging on there.
That's where I am.
Let's see if you can get this one then. So the clue is American indie pop band who rose to prominence with the 2012 album Some Nights. The answer is Fun. So the player that I'm looking for would be Davis Keeler Fun.
Right.
Yeah.
God, where's the potato?
I wouldn't have known the indie band, but yeah,
well,
right.
See, you might know the clues do get easier. I've got all the clues are in this bucket, in the famous bucket. So I'm going to sit here with a bucket between my legs or on the floor, and I'll pick them out. I'll pick them out at random.
Alan, I bet you're glad you're not here.
And
aren't
we'll see what happens. Listen, this will be absolutely fine. The person who's going to go first, by the way, is going to be Alan. And remember, if you get it right, you will nominate who goes next. So the aim is do not be the one answering the question at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, 3 minutes on the clock. I'll pick the first one out. Jim, can you do me a favour? Can you sort of hold the microphone for me? That's it. Great. Pick the first one out. Your time, Alan, and time everyone starts now. Your clue is capital city, home to a big tower and Mickey Mouse. Capital city, home to a big tower and Mickey Mouse.
I'm just trying to think of the player.
Just say the answer to the clue, and then you might get there.
Paris.
Yeah, it is. Paris.
So that would be.
Oh, Maris.
So the answer would be what?
George Paris.
Correct. Nominate a player.
Jim,
your clue is spiky plant, often green. Spiky plant, often green.
Cucumber.
Cactus.
Yeah, so the answer would be
Bacchus.
So the answer is so it's not Keanu Bacchus, it's
Keanu Cactus.
correct. Nominate a player.
Clive.
I don't want to play.
you've got no choice, Clive.
Phrase for when you accumulate the same amount of money that you first put in. No profit or no loss.
I can't think of a player that rhymes with poor investment.
It's not for investment.
Break even.
So it would be, think about podcast nicknames.
Uncle Stephen.
So it's
Uncle Break even.
correct. Nominate a player.
You.
You can't nominate me. I'm doing the questions.
Jim.
Jim, you're under the spotlight again. Your clue is another name for a gherkin or cucumber, small and prickly.
Absolutely no idea. Honestly, no idea.
How do you go on now?
You've got to keep guessing. You've got to guess.
Shriveled up tomato.
No.
Shriveled up pepper.
No.
Out to date bit of bacon.
No. Another name for a gherkin or cucumber, green and small. You get them in a jar. You're in a bit of a
pickle.
So it's where's the
you're in a bit of a
Libby.
Pickle.
Think strikers.
No, you're in a bit of a nickel.
So it is.
You're in a bit of a Tom Nichols.
Tom what?
Tom Pickles.
Correct number that player.
Alan.
Alan, it's you. It's on you. We're trying to get the last one.
Jim.
Oh no.
Oh, is it 3 minutes?
Sorry,
I'm out.
Oh,
Oh, what a shame.
You see, he knew the answer to the pickle question, but he was just playing for time to catch you out.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Alan, you've been caught offside, therefore.
No worries. Cheers, Jim.
See this curly whirly I've got for you, Alan?
Thank you.
I'm gonna give it Jim.
All right.
Therefore,
I'll keep
Clive-
the biscuits then.
Clive and Jim both get points. Well done.
Quality
if you-
game.
You see, that's why it would work better when everyone's together and we'd have tension music and all that. So Christmas time, when Santa's arrived, we might have another version of that. But the random game generator could strike at any time. So there you go. Right, that's almost all we've got time for. Alan, final word from yourself. Obviously, big month ahead. We've started relatively well in League One. Can it continue?
Yes, I don't see why not. And let's not get too carried away that if we don't get the right result against Cambridge, which we're all hoping we will, keep behind the boys, and I'm sure things will come good.
Jim, your final thoughts ahead of a tricky September?
Pretty pleased so far. I think one game at a time, and don't turn your nose up at valuable points. If it's just a draw, that's a good point. Just keep going.
Clive?
I think this month's going to give us a really good indicator of where we're going to finish in the season.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And hopefully at the end of it, we'll be in a mid-table position, looking all optimistic ahead of an October fixture list as well. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for getting involved with the podcast today. And we will see you again next time. Reminder, there'll be no podcast in the week, so we haven't got a game until next Saturday. And a reminder that it is an early kickoff as well. So set your alarms a little bit earlier for that one, and we will see you at some time next week. Whether it'll be before or after the Bradford game, not sure. So stay tuned to our social media to find out when. And just to leave you with this one, because it's sticking up in the bucket. Common term for when one has no money, aka when you've been to the club shop and brought one shirt. The answer. There he is.
Aidan Spint.
And here's the one who got caught offside. You see, people can get the game, just not within that 3 minutes. See you next time.
Thanks as always for joining us. That's all we've got time for on this afternoon's Mansfield Matters podcast. My thanks as ever to you for watching and for listening, and of course to the Mansfield Matters podcast panel. So after the Stags have been well rested, you can rest assured that Podcast Predictions is back, and I will be staking my claim to stay top for the rest of the season. That'll happen for about one game. If you want to play along now, you can do so. The link that you need is in the description. Remember that you must do so no later than 1 hour and 1 minute before kickoff on Saturday. And a reminder that we play just league games only this season. Make sure you follow us on all things social media to find out when we're next going to be live. A little hint, it will be after next weekend's game. This is the show for the fans, by the fans. Why? Because Mansfield Matters. We'll see you back at One Call Stadium on Saturday.